Kirk Ferentz is hoping that his offense and defense doesn't have so much of a disparity between the two, but this will still be an Iowa team that will be tough to beat, even if they do struggle again offensively, which shouldn't be the case. The 10 guys that we'll talk about today will be fun to talk about in terms of underrated players who a lot of people probably don't know, but it's a group that needs to be respected, a group that needs to get more recognition for what they do. And we'll start with the offense. Luke Lachey may be the feature point of this offense at tight end. And we talk about what they've been able to do offensively, specifically at the tight end position. Tight end has been a traditionally great position for Iowa, and I think that you're going to see that continue. Luke Lachey is a good sized playmaker for this team, 6'6", 253 pounds, 398 yards last year. And if this offense even takes the slightest step forward from what it was in 2022, then you're going to see a guy like Lachey have a big year. The defense, obviously, everybody talks about the defense when you talk about Iowa. What they did last year was one of the more impressive feats in college football because the offense struggled so much. To be able to put together one of the best offense or one of the best defenses in college football was incredible. Noah Shannon comes back after a solid season, 8.5 tackles for a loss, two sacks, a playmaker who's been with Iowa for a little while. And he's a big reason why they were successful. This team that finished first in yards per play. So that's something to keep an eye on. This is a group that is really dangerous, a really explosive group, a really disruptive group. And that defensive line shouldn't have any troubles continuing that tradition. Logan Lee is another player to keep in mind. 8 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. Another player who has been in Iowa's program for a while, 6'5", 291 pounds. Iowa's front seven is just so menacing and so it just don't quit. They do not give up and they don't care what you think of them. They don't care if you think they're the best defense in college football or the worst. They are going to be relentless in their attack. They're going to be relentless in their ability to play at a high level, and you're going to have to keep up with that. Now, you're obviously going to have to find ways to score points on Iowa. And if you're able to do that and their offense doesn't take a step forward for the Hawkeyes, then it really doesn't matter what the defense does. But if this defense continues doing what it's doing and the offense takes a step forward, now you have to look at Iowa a little bit different. Running the football shouldn't change for Iowa. They shouldn't just become this air raid team. And KALEB Johnson will be a beneficiary of that. 6 foot, 222 pounds, a good size player at running back, had 779 yards last year and 6 touchdowns. And again, running the football should continue to be a focal point. And they finished 124th, but that's mostly because they couldn't throw the football. And if you're able to even take a slight step forward, and obviously the jokes are going to continue flying about what they need to average, and we're not really going to go into that because it's played out at this point. But I think when you look down into the X's and O's, finding ways to just even take a slight step forward, and with the talent they brought in to help with that, a guy like KALEB Johnson should have a big year, even with the slightest improvement. And a player that they did bring in was ERICK from Michigan, another tight end who has been a proven playmaker at times for Michigan, and now he gets a fresh start at Iowa. And this, again, is a program that knows how to produce good tight ends, that knows how to create these guys and put them in good positions. That shouldn't change. Again, Iowa is not going to just transform into this completely different offense. They're still going to do what Iowa does, which is run the football, play action, get the tight ends involved. That's still going to continue. It's just a matter of how do they be more efficient? How do they get more explosive plays and how do they put up more points on the scoreboard? Because when you finish 129th in yards per play, when you average 4 yards per play, it's not going to get the job done. And another player you bring in to help with that is CADE McNamara. Now, CADE McNamara is an interesting player because he brought Michigan to the college football playoff and then proceeded to lose his job the next year. Now, obviously, JJ McCarthy beat him for that job and the consistency wasn't there, but this is still a solid kid who can make some throws. If you actually go back and watch his film from 2 years ago, this is someone who can make big throws. You look at some of the things he did against Georgia. Now, obviously, he got rattled because Georgia has one of the better defenses in college football that we've ever seen, but he was still making big plays. He was still making accurate throws, and that's something that will help Iowa quite a bit. If he's able to even take the slightest step forward for Iowa's passing attack. That's going to be huge. The rushing attack should be fine. And CADE McNamara is a great addition for an offense that needs to find a player that can be better than what they had last year. And CADE McNamara is someone who can do that. He's played in big games. He knows what's expected of this team. He knows what's expected of Iowa and what is expected in the Big Ten. And that's a huge addition in the transfer portal. Now, a player they brought in on defense from the transfer portal and a great fit for this program and this culture is Nick Jackson. And when you lose a player like Jack Campbell, you need to find someone that can make plays just as well as he did. And Nick Jackson, all he did at Virginia was make plays. A career 352 tackles, 20 tackles for loss, 10 and a half sacks, 8 passes defended. I just can't speak enough to what Nick Jackson can do. He is a playmaker that I really like. I think that he is a perfect fit for what Iowa wants to do. And if you're looking for a leader to replace Jack Campbell, he's not Jack Campbell, but he is someone who will make it feel like Jack Campbell almost never left. And that's, again, for this defense, that's what makes them really fun. And a lot of people expect them to be just as good, if not better, than they were last year. A player that might benefit from the offensive struggles, well, did last year, but they're hoping benefits less this year, is Tory Taylor. Should you have a punter this high? Probably not. But I have to give the guy love because he was a difference maker for a team that just couldn't move the ball very well. He averaged 45.4 yards per punt, and he has a future if he wants it in the NFL, and good size for a punter at 6'4", 232. So he is someone that you probably don't want to see very often if you're an Iowa fan. But if you do see him, you know you're getting a consistent player that can flip the field if need be. And hopefully the offense gets it figured out. But if not, the defense will just have to do its part. Another player to keep an eye on is Joe Evans. Joe Evans is someone who's flown under the radar for so long, and I think you're about to see more people know his name. He is someone who can be an explosive, disruptive player for this defense. Iowa has a lot of guys that could stand out, and Joe Evans has the ability to potentially be the best of that group. Now, Nick Jackson is someone who probably will be on high on that list, but I really like what Joe Evans has done in his career. 88 tackles, 21 and a half tackles for loss, 18 and a half sacks. He is a proven playmaker, someone who can be an explosive weapon. And this defense, like I said, is in a great position still, even with the losses they sustained. This is still a good group. It's a group that should be, once again, tough to move the football on. And that's huge for an Iowa team that obviously wants to make sure that last year is not repeated in 2023. The name that everybody is talking about with the Iowa Hawkeyes is Cooper DeJean. You look at what he did last year, 5 interceptions was probably the biggest thing everybody talked about. And another Iowa DB that is still underrated, another Iowa DB that knows how to make plays, and another Iowa DB that fits really well into what Iowa wants to do defensively. This is a passing defense that finished 6th in the country last year, and that should continue. There's a lot of exciting players on this defense. You have plenty of new faces that should contribute, but Cooper DeJean is someone that is a reliable player that, if anything, will take away half of the field. You're going to put pressure on other guys, but with what Iowa has done in recruiting, with the culture that they built, there shouldn't be too many concerns about what they can do in the back end of their defense. Iowa is a really interesting program, a really underrated program, and a program that will, once again, they finished 8-5 last year, which, when you think about it, is pretty impressive given what their offense didn't do. The fact that their defense was able to compensate for what this offense couldn't, I think that says a lot. That speaks a lot to what this program is doing. That speaks a lot to what Kirk Ferentz is doing for this team and where they're going. And that should continue. I don't think that there are any concerns about where Iowa will be at the end of the year. It's just a matter of what can they do to make that offense take a step forward.